The morning sun filtered through the crystalline walls of the Galactic Education Center on Kepler Station, casting prismatic rainbows across the sterile white floors. Maya Chen sat at the back of the xenobiology classroom, her worn Earth-made boots propped up on the desk, as she sketched diagrams of muscle fiber structures in her notebook. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her olive skin bore the small scars that marked her as someone from the infamous third planet of the Sol system. The other students gave her a wide berth. Word traveled fast in the confined space of an orbital education platform, and everyone knew what she was. A Deathworlder. A human. Professor Zeleth clicked his 6 delicate limbs against the lecture podium, the sound echoing like wind chimes in the hushed classroom. His species, the Valthara, were known for their academic excellence and peaceful nature. Their homeworld of Valthos was a garden paradise where the most dangerous creature was roughly equivalent to Earth's butterflies. Today, we will be examining the muscular systems of various sentient species, Zeleth announced, his translator collar converting his musical tones into standard galactic, as you can see from the holographic displays. Most civilized species have evolved elegant solutions to locomotion and strength requirements. Maya glanced up from her sketches as 3-dimensional models of different alien anatomies rotated above the professor's desk. The Zelani with their gas-filled muscle sacs, the crystalline Thuros with their piezoelectric movement systems, the aquatic Deeperi with their hydraulic limbs. Note how efficient these systems are, Zeleth continued, gesturing with one of his feathered appendages. No unnecessary redundancy, no wasteful over-engineering. Evolution has selected for precisely what is needed, and no more. A Kraloth student near the front raised his tentacled arm. Professor, what about the humans? Are we going to study their anatomy too? The classroom fell silent. Several students turned to stare at Maya, who continued sketching without looking up. Zeleth's large, compound eyes shifted nervously. Well, the professor said carefully, human anatomy is rather unique. Perhaps we should leave that for another day. Why? Asked Sierra, a blue-skinned Arathi girl with genuine curiosity in her voice. They're here at the university now. Shouldn't we learn about all sentient species? Maya could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on her. She set down her stylus and looked up, meeting Sierra's gaze directly. Because we're weird, she said simply. Nervous laughter rippled through the classroom. Maya shrugged and returned to her sketching. It's not that you're weird, Zeleth said diplomatically. It's just that human evolution took a very unusual path. Your species developed in conditions that most civilized worlds would consider uninhabitable. You mean the Deathworld thing? Maya said, still not looking up. The word Deathworld sent a visible shiver through the classroom. It wasn't a term used lightly in galactic society. Deathworlds were planets so hostile that merely existing on them required constant struggle against annihilation. They were rare, studied from a safe distance, and generally considered unsuitable for intelligent life. Except Earth had produced intelligent life. Aggressively intelligent life that had somehow not only survived but thrived in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens within hours. Your world is classified as a Class X hive hazard zone, Zeleth explained to the class. Extreme gravity variations, violent weather patterns, toxic atmospheric components, seismic instability, and predatory megafauna. It's remarkable that any complex life evolved there at all. And yet, here I am, Maya said, finally setting down her stylus and leaning back in her chair. Want to see what evolution on a death world produces? Before Zeleth could respond, Maya stood up and walked to the front of the classroom. She was tall for her species, nearly 6 feet, with the lean muscle definition that came from growing up under Earth's crushing gravity. Even in the station's artificial gravity field, which was set to accommodate the weakest species present, she moved with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect balance and control. May I, Professor? She asked, gesturing to the holographic display controls. Zeleth hesitated, then nodded. Maya input a command sequence, and suddenly, a 3-dimensional model of a human torso appeared above the desk. The class leaned forward as Maya began pointing out various systems, Redundant cardiovascular system, she said, highlighting the heart and its backup pathways. If one part fails, others compensate. Skeletal system designed to handle impacts and stress loads that would shatter most other species. Muscular system with both fast twitch and slow twitch fibers for explosive power and endurance. She zoomed in on the nervous system. Reaction times optimized for immediate threat response. Pain tolerance enhanced to allow continued function under injury. And here's the interesting part. The hologram shifted to show the human brain. Neuroplasticity that allows for rapid adaptation to new threats, combined with pattern recognition systems that can identify danger from minimal information. Oh, and we can metabolize a huge variety of substances that are toxic to most species. A nervous thorough student raised a crystalline appendage. But surely these are just theoretical adaptations. Your species is civilized now. You don't actually face these primitive dangers anymore. Maya grinned, and several students unconsciously leaned back. There was something unsettling about the expression on a Deathworlder's face. That's the funny thing about evolution, she said. It doesn't just go away because you build cities and starships. We're all still carrying around the hardware our species needed to survive. But you're just a student, protested another alien. You've probably never even been in real danger. Maya's grin widened. I'm 17 years old. I've survived 2 hurricane seasons on Earth, a flash flood that took out my town's bridge, and an encounter with what you'd probably classify as megafauna but we just call bears. Last year, I helped my dad repair our habitat dome after a seismic event you'd register as a Category 5 disaster. The classroom was dead quiet now. Maya continued her impromptu lecture. See, that's what I think you don't understand about humans. We don't think of ourselves as particularly tough or dangerous. This is just normal for us. The fact that we can function with broken bones, that we can ignore pain signals that would incapacitate other species, that we can adapt to environments that would kill you. This is just Tuesday for us, she gestured to herself. I'm not some elite warrior or special forces operative. I'm a suburban kid who wants to study xenobiology, but I was born and raised on a world that tries to kill everything on it, every single day. Zelith was looking increasingly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. Perhaps we should return to the planned curriculum. That was when Crix stood up. Crix was a saurian from the desert world of Aridus. His species was known for their aggressive territorial nature and sharp-tempered dispositions, though they had been members of the Galactic Union for over 2,000 years. Unlike the other students, who seemed fascinated or terrified by Maya's casual descriptions of life on a Deathworld, Crix appeared angry. I'm tired of listening to this Deathworlder propaganda, he hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. You act like being from a dangerous planet makes you special. But it just makes you primitive. Maya turned to face him, her expression calm and neutral. I never said it made me special. Just different. Different, Crix spat. You mean savage. Unrefined. Your entire species only joined the Union 50 years ago. And you think you can lecture civilized beings about evolution? The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Professor Zelith stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of his position. Now, students, let's keep this discussion academic and respectful. But Crix wasn't finished, his yellow eyes fixed on Maya with undisguised contempt. My people have been civilized for millennia. We've mastered art, science, philosophy. We've transcended our base nature. Your kind still solves problems with violence. Maya's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but suddenly she seemed more solid, more present, like a statue coming to life. You know what's funny about that? She said quietly. Every species I've met since coming here talks about how they've transcended their base nature, how civilized they are. But you know what I notice? She took a step forward. Crix held his ground. But Maya could see the uncertainty in his reptilian features. You've all gotten soft, she continued. You've forgotten what you evolved from. You've built this perfect little bubble of safety and convinced yourselves that the universe is a civilized place. But it's not. That's exactly what I mean, Crix snapped, This violent, paranoid worldview is realistic? Maya finished. Because the universe doesn't care about your philosophy, or your art, or how many thousands of years you've been civilized. It's still the same hostile place it always was. You've just been lucky enough to hide from that fact. Crix's crest flared, a clear sign of aggression in his species. Are you calling my people weak? I'm saying your people have forgotten how to be strong. Maya replied evenly. There's a difference. The Saurian's hand moved to his belt, where he carried the ceremonial blade that was traditional for students from Eridus. It was meant to be symbolic, a reminder of his species' warrior heritage, but the edge was still sharp enough to be dangerous. Perhaps, he said slowly, you need a lesson in respect. The blade whispered from its sheath, the metal gleaming under the classroom lights. Crix held it low and ready, his training evident in the way he balanced his weight. The other students gasped and scrambled backward. Someone screamed. Professor Zaleth was frantically tapping his emergency communicator, calling for security. Maya looked at the knife, then at Crix, then at the terrified faces surrounding her, and she smirked. Really? She said, crossing her arms. You're going to threaten a human with a knife? The casual dismissal in her voice seemed to infuriate Crix even more. His grip tightened on the blade's handle. I'm going to teach you some humility. Deathworlder. Maya glanced around the classroom, noting the exits, the positions of the other students, the distance to Crix. Her mind automatically catalogued threats and responses, a process so ingrained she didn't even think about it. Professor Zaleth, she said, never taking her eyes off Crix. Should I continue the lesson on human anatomy? Or would you prefer to handle this disciplinary issue first? The Valthara was trembling, his feathered limbs shaking so badly he could barely operate his communicator. Maya, please, just step back. Security is on their way. Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Maya said cheerfully. This is actually a perfect teaching opportunity. See? This is what I was talking about. Crix here thinks a sharp piece of metal makes him dangerous. She turned to address the class as if she were giving a lecture, completely ignoring the armed Saurian standing 3 feet away. The thing about humans is that we evolved alongside predators that could kill us with their bare claws, their teeth, their sheer physical power. So we learned to fight dirty. Crix lunged forward with surprising speed, the ceremonial blade aimed at Maya's center mass. To the other students, watching in horror, it seemed like she would be skewered before she could react. Maya moved. What happened next was so fast that most of the students missed it entirely. One moment, Crix was attacking with his blade, and the next he was on the floor, groaning. And Maya was holding his knife. She examined the weapon critically, testing the balance and edge. Nice craftsmanship, she said approvingly. Traditional Saurian forging techniques, right? The alloy composition is interesting. How? Crix wheezed from the floor, clutching his wrist where Maya had struck the pressure point to make him drop the weapon. Fast twitch muscle fibers, Maya explained to the class, as if she hadn't just disarmed an aggressive alien in front of 30 witnesses, combined with pattern recognition and threat assessment training that every human kid gets growing up on Earth. You telegraphed your attack about 3 seconds before you made it. She looked down at Crix with something that might have been sympathy. The thing is, you're not actually a warrior. Your people were warriors thousands of years ago, but you're just playing dress-up. You've got the ceremonial blade and the traditional training forms, but you've never actually had to fight for your life. Security forces burst through the classroom door, their stunners drawn. They stopped short when they saw Maya standing calmly beside the disarmed Crix, still examining his blade with academic interest. What happened here? Demanded the security chief, a heavily armored Cronin whose species served as peacekeepers throughout the Union. Crix attempted to assault a fellow student with a weapon, Professor Zaleth reported, his voice still shaky. Miss Chen defended herself. The security chief looked at Maya, then at Crix, then at the knife in Maya's hand. Are you injured, miss? Nope, Maya said, offering the blade handle first to the security officer. Though I think Crix might want some ice for his wrist. I may have hit the nerve cluster a little harder than necessary. As the security team helped Crix to his feet and began their investigation, Maya returned to her seat at the back of the classroom. The other students stared at her in a mixture of awe and terror. "As I was saying," she said, picking up her stylus and returning to her sketches, "human anatomy is a bit unusual compared to most civilized species." Professor Zeleth looked around the classroom, taking in the shocked faces of his students and the disrupted lesson plan. I think that's enough for today." Class dismissed. As the students filed out in nervous clusters, whispering among themselves, Sierra stopped by Maya's desk. The blue-skinned Orathi girl looked shaken but curious. "Is it true what you said?" she asked quietly. "About humans being trained to fight from childhood?" Maya looked up from her notebook, considering the question. "We're not trained to fight." "Exactly. We're trained to survive. Sometimes those are the same thing." And you really don't think you're anything special?" Maya shrugged. "I told you. I'm just a suburban kid who wants to study xenobiology, but I'm a suburban kid from a death world." She grinned again, and this time Sierra didn't flinch away. "Want to grab lunch? I promise I'm less intimidating when I'm not giving impromptu anatomy lessons." As they walked out of the classroom together, Sierra couldn't help but notice how Maya moved through the station corridors. She didn't swagger or posture like some of the other students from warrior cultures. She just moved with a quiet confidence that suggested she was always aware of her surroundings, always ready for whatever might happen next. It was, Sierra thought, both fascinating and terrifying. No wonder the humans had adapted to space travel so quickly, despite being newcomers to the galactic community. When you came from a world that constantly tried to kill you, the vacuum of space probably seemed almost peaceful by comparison. The cafeteria of Kepler Station buzzed with the usual multilingual chatter of students from across the galaxy. But Maya noticed how conversations died down as she and Sierra found an empty table. Word had spread fast about the incident in xenobiology class. She could feel dozens of eyes tracking her movement as she set down her tray of what the station computer optimistically labeled Earth-compatible nutrition. "Is it always like this?" Sierra asked, glancing around at the staring faces, before unpacking her own meal of crystalline nutrient pods. "Pretty much," Maya replied, poking at what might have been synthesized chicken with her fork. "Though it's worse today. Usually people just avoid me because I'm human. Now they're avoiding me because I'm a human who disarmed someone in front of 30 witnesses. Are you bothered by it?" Maya considered the question as she chewed. The synthesized protein had the right texture but tasted like cardboard. She missed real food from Earth, missed the complex flavors that came from plants and animals that had evolved in a biosphere where everything was fighting for survival. "Not really," she said finally. "I grew up being different. Back home, I was the weird kid who wanted to study alien biology instead of following the family tradition." "What's your family tradition?" "Atmospheric engineering," Maya said with a slight smile. "My parents design and maintain the habitat domes that keep human settlements livable. My grandmother was one of the first terraforming specialists. My brother's studying climate modification at University of Mars." Sierra's large eyes widened. "Your people terraform entire worlds?" "When we have to. Earth's not exactly hospitable, even for us. Most human settlements need some kind of environmental control system just to be survivable long-term." Maya gestured around the cafeteria. "This station, the atmosphere, gravity, temperature controls, to us, this is just basic life support technology. We've been building closed-loop ecosystems for centuries." "I never thought about it that way," Sierra admitted. "Must be nice," Maya said without any trace of bitterness. "Though I bet it means you never developed the same problem-solving instincts we did." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 3 upperclassmen Maya didn't recognize. 2 were Zaltharians, tall and elegant with their characteristic silver skin and elongated limbs. The third was a hegemony citizen, his species' blue-black exoskeleton gleaming under the artificial lights. "You're the human," said the lead Zaltharian, his translator giving his words a distinctly unfriendly tone. Maya looked up from her meal. "I'm a human. There are about 30 of us on the station. You're the one who attacked Crix. I'm the one who stopped Crix from stabbing me." Maya corrected. There's a difference. There's a difference. The hegemony student leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the light like dark jewels. Crix's family has been notified of the incident. They're displeased. Maya set down her fork and gave the three aliens her full attention. Something in their posture, in the way they positioned themselves around the table, triggered her threat assessment protocols, and they've requested that the matter be settled according to traditional Saurian law, the second Zaltharian said. Honor combat. Sierra looked confused. But the station operates under Galactic Union jurisdiction. Traditional law doesn't apply here. It does when both parties agree to it, the first Zaltharian explained. And when the station administrator approves the arrangement. Maya leaned back in her chair, studying the three aliens. Let me guess. You're here to make sure I understand the gravity of the situation. Maybe suggest that it would be better for everyone if I just apologized and accepted responsibility? The Saurian family has influence throughout this sector, the hegemony student said. It would be wise to consider their position carefully. Their position, Maya said slowly, is that their son tried to stab a classmate and got embarrassed when it didn't work out the way he planned. Their position, the lead Zaltharian corrected, is that a violent Deathworlder humiliated their son in front of his peers using savage fighting techniques inappropriate for civilized society. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear, exactly, but the kind of focused alertness that came when a situation was about to turn dangerous. Savage fighting techniques. You did strike him with precision targeting of neural pressure points, the second Zaltharian pointed out. That's not exactly what one would expect from an academic dispute. No, Maya agreed. It's what one would expect from someone who was about to be stabbed. The three exchanged glances. The hegemony student spoke again. The point is, Miss Chen, that your response was disproportionate. In civilized society, there are procedures for handling disputes. Mediation, arbitration, not physical violence. Maya looked around the cafeteria, noting the positions of exits, the location of security cameras, the number of potential witnesses, old habits from growing up on a world where situational awareness meant survival. You know what's interesting about that? She said conversationally. Every species I've met talks about how civilized they are, how they've moved beyond violence, how they settle disputes through talking. She met each of their gazes in turn, but the moment one of your own gets shown up by a human, suddenly it's all about honor, combat, and traditional law. That's not what this is about, the lead Zaltharian protested. Isn't it? Maya stood up slowly, noting how all three aliens tensed as she reached her full height. Because it seems to me like you're here to intimidate me into backing down, to make me apologize for defending myself so that your friend Crix doesn't have to deal with the consequences of pulling a knife on someone. The consequences, the hegemony student said, his voice taking on a harder edge, might be more severe than you realize. Crix's family has connections throughout the academic community. Your future here could become very difficult. Maya smiled, and she saw all three aliens unconsciously take a step back. It was the same reaction she'd gotten from Crix, the same instinctive fear response that seemed hardwired into species that had evolved in safer environments. Are you threatening me? She asked pleasantly. We're explaining the situation, the second Zaltharian said quickly. The political realities. The political reality, Maya interrupted, is that you're trying to bully a 17-year-old girl into apologizing for not letting herself be stabbed? She picked up her tray and stepped around the table, forcing them to move aside. And the other political reality is that you picked the wrong species to try that with. As she walked away, she heard the lead Zaltharian call after her. This isn't over. Deathworlder. Teen? Maya stopped and turned back. The entire cafeteria had gone silent. Hundreds of alien students watching the confrontation with fascination and fear. You're right, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. It's not over. But here's something you might want to consider before you decide what happens next. She gestured to herself with casual confidence. I'm not even a particularly tough human. Back home, I'm just a bookish kid who prefers studying to sports. But I grew up on a planet where the weather can kill you, where the animals can kill you, where the plants can kill you, where the very ground under your feet can open up and swallow you whole. The cafeteria was dead silent now. Maya continued, her voice matter of fact. Every human child learns basic survival skills before they learn to read. We learn to assess threats, to respond to violence, to make life or death decisions under pressure. Not because we want to, but because our world demands it. She looked directly at the three upperclassmen. So, if you want to escalate this situation, if you want to keep pushing, keep threatening, keep trying to intimidate me, go ahead. But understand that you're not dealing with someone who's going to be scared into compliance. You're dealing with someone whose entire species evolved to handle much worse problems than you. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Maya shrugged and walked away, leaving her half-finished meal and three very thoughtful aliens behind. Sierra caught up with her in the corridor outside the cafeteria. "Maya, wait!" Maya slowed her pace but didn't stop walking. "Sorry about that. Didn't mean to drag you into alien politics. Are you always that?" Sierra searched for the right word. "Intense?" Maya laughed, and the sound surprised them both. "Actually, that was pretty mild for a human confrontation. I didn't even raise my voice." What would happen if you did raise your voice?" "Well, back home, if someone threatened my family or friends, things would get a lot more direct." Maya paused at a junction in the corridor, checking the wall display for directions to her next class. "The thing is, Sierra, humans don't really do intimidation the way other species do. We're not hierarchical like the Saurians. We don't have caste systems like the hegemony. We don't settle things through formal duels. What do you do?" Maya considered the question. "We solve the problem. Permanently. Usually in the most efficient way possible." They walked in silence for a while, passing through the academic sectors of the station. The corridors were designed to be calming and aesthetically pleasing, with soft lighting and harmonious color schemes that supposedly promoted learning. To Maya, it felt artificial and sterile. She missed the chaotic vitality of Earth's biosphere. "Can I ask you something?" Sierra said eventually. "Sure. What was it like, growing up on Earth? I mean, really like. Not the sanitized version they teach in xenocultural studies." Maya stopped walking and looked at her new friend. Sierra's blue skin had deepened to a more purple shade, which Maya had learned was a sign of serious curiosity in Arathi psychology. "You really want to know?" "I really want to know." Maya leaned against the corridor wall, gathering her thoughts. "How do you explain a death world to someone who had never experienced real danger?" "I grew up in what we called the Portland sector," she began. "It's in the Pacific Northwest region of North America. The area used to be temperate rainforest, before the climate shifts made it uninhabitable for unprotected human life." "What made it uninhabitable?" "Atmospheric composition changes, mostly. Too much CO2. Not enough oxygen, and the introduction of some aggressive invasive species that our ancestors... Well, let's just say that terraforming sometimes has unintended consequences." Maya pulled out her personal tablet and showed Sierra a hologram of her hometown. "This is where I lived until I was 16. The image showed a cluster of interconnected domes set into a mountainous landscape. The domes were constructed from what looked like advanced transparent materials, and inside them Maya could see green spaces, residential areas, and industrial facilities. "It looks beautiful," Sierra said. "It is. But look outside the domes." Sierra peered more closely at the hologram. Outside the protected areas, the landscape was harsh and unwelcoming. Twisted trees that looked more like gnarled sculptures than living plants. Rock formations that seemed to shift and move in the wind. And in the distance, something that might have been animals, but were too large and strangely shaped to be anything Sierra recognized. "Those are razorbacks," Maya explained, pointing to the distant creatures. "Think of them as evolutionary mistakes. They're about the size of your average transport vehicle, covered in natural armor plating, and they eat pretty much anything organic they can catch. And they live near your home? They live everywhere on Earth. The razorbacks, the acid spitters, the tunneling swarms, the sky hunters. Earth's ecology is basically one giant arms race between predator and prey species, and nobody ever really wins. Sierra stared at the hologram in fascination and horror. How do you live with that? Very carefully, Maya said with a slight smile. Every human settlement has early warning systems, defensive barriers, emergency protocols. Every human child grows up knowing how to respond to ecosystem, breach alerts, how to identify dangerous species by sound and movement patterns, how to find shelter and signal for help. She expanded the hologram to show the interior of one of the domes. But it's not all about defense. We also learn to work with the environment. See those garden sections? We cultivate Earth species alongside imported ones. The native plants are tough, adaptive, and some of them have properties that are useful for medicine, materials, even food. It sounds terrifying, Sierra admitted. It's home, Maya said simply. And it teaches you things. How to assess risk. How to make decisions quickly. How to adapt to changing circumstances. How to work together to survive. She closed the hologram and looked at Sierra seriously. That's what those three back in the cafeteria don't understand. They think humans are violent because we choose to be, because we're primitive or savage or whatever. But we're not violent by choice. We're capable of violence when necessary, because our world taught us that sometimes necessity doesn't give you other options. Is that why you weren't afraid when Crix pulled the knife? Maya thought about that. I wasn't not afraid. Fear's useful. It keeps you alive. But I've been in actual life-threatening situations before. A ceremonial blade wielded by someone who's never been in a real fight? That's not even close to the most dangerous thing I've faced this year. What was the most dangerous thing you faced this year? Maya grinned. Helping my dad repair the atmospheric processors during a seismic event. We had to work outside the dome for 6 hours while the ground was shifting under our feet and the local wildlife was agitated by the vibrations. At one point, a pack of tunnel hunters broke through the emergency barriers, and we had to improvise defenses while maintaining the repair work. And you survived that? Obviously. But the point is, when your normal life includes that kind of risk management, dealing with one angry alien with a knife is just... Tuesday. They had reached the entrance to Maya's next class. Advanced Theoretical Physics. Sierra hesitated at the doorway. Maya, those 3 students back in the cafeteria. Do you think they'll really cause trouble for you? Maya considered the question. Probably. But that's their choice. I'm not going to apologize for defending myself. And I'm not going to be intimidated into changing my behavior. What if they have connections? What if they can make things difficult for you academically? Then I'll deal with it, Maya said matter-of-factly. That's what humans do. We adapt, we overcome, we solve problems. It's what our species is good at. As Sierra walked away to her own class, Maya entered the physics classroom and took her usual seat at the back. The other students gave her an even wider berth than usual, word of the cafeteria confrontation having spread throughout the station's social networks. Professor Korvath was an elderly centaurian whose species was renowned for their mathematical abilities. He was setting up a complex equation on the holographic display when he noticed the unusual tension in the classroom. Is there a problem today? He asked, his 4 eyes scanning the nervous faces of his students. No problem, Professor, Maya said calmly. Just the usual Deathworld drama. Korvath's expression was unreadable. But Maya thought she detected something that might have been amusement in his voice. Well then, perhaps we can channel that dramatic energy into understanding the mathematics of faster-than-light travel. As the professor began his lecture on exotic matter manipulation, Maya found herself thinking about the conversation with Sierra. It was the first time since arriving at the station that anyone had shown genuine curiosity about human culture, rather than fear or disgust. Maybe, she thought as she took notes on quantum field equations, this whole university experience might work out after all. Even if she did have to deal with alien politics and honor codes and whatever other complications her classmates decided to throw at her. After all, she was human. Solving complicated problems was what they did. The emergency klaxons started screaming at 0347 station time, dragging Maya from deep sleep with the kind of adrenaline spike that came from growing up on a world where alarms meant immediate life or death situations. She was out of bed and checking her personal emergency kit before her roommate, a gentle Thessarian named Lyra, had even opened her eyes. "What's happening?" Lyra mumbled, her translator collar struggling with her sleep-slurred speech. Maya was already pulling on her jumpsuit and boots. Station emergency. Multiple alarm pattern means either catastrophic system failure or external threat. The lights in their dormitory room shifted to emergency red, and the station's automated systems began their announcement. All students and faculty report to designated emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Lyra sat up in her bed, her large eyes wide with fear. Emergency shelters? Come on, Maya said, grabbing her roommate's arm and helping her to her feet. We need to move. Now, the corridors were chaos. Hundreds of students from dozens of different species were streaming toward the emergency shelter areas, many of them clearly panicking. Maya could hear crying, screaming, and the babble of multiple languages as translator systems overloaded. But what struck her most was how unprepared everyone seemed. These were supposed to be the brightest young minds from across the galaxy. But they were stumbling around like lost children, getting in each other's way, blocking corridor intersections as they stopped to argue about directions. "This way," Maya called out, leading Lyra toward what she recognized as the most direct route to the nearest shelter. Behind them, she could hear other students calling out questions and following her lead. That was when the station shuddered. It wasn't the gentle vibration of normal operations or even the stronger pulses of the artificial gravity generators cycling. This was a deep, bone-rattling impact that Maya felt in her teeth. Emergency lighting flickered, and somewhere in the distance, she heard the distinctive whistle of atmosphere venting to space. "Oh no," Lyra whimpered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." Maya grabbed her friend's shoulders and forced eye contact. "Lyra, look at me. Focus on my voice. We're going to be fine. But I need you to stay calm and do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that?" The Thessarian nodded, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "Good. Now stay close to me and don't stop moving." They pushed through the crowd of panicking students, Maya using her knowledge of station layout to guide them through maintenance corridors and service passages that most of the student body didn't even know existed. Behind them, she could hear the crowd growing louder and more disorganized. The emergency shelter was a reinforced section of the station designed to maintain life support even if the rest of the facility was compromised. It could hold about 800 people in relative safety for up to 72 hours. The problem was that there were over 2,000 students and faculty on the station. When they reached the shelter entrance, Maya's worst fears were confirmed. The area was packed with beings, but there was no organization, no coordination. People were pushing and shoving, trying to force their way in while others blocked the entrance, arguing about priority and procedure. "Students with valid identification first," someone was shouting. "Faculty and senior researchers have priority access." "What about emergency medical cases?" someone else yelled back. "We have injured here." Maya looked at the chaos and felt something cold settle in her stomach. This wasn't an evacuation. This was a disaster waiting to happen. "Maya!" She turned to see Sierra pushing through the crowd, her blue skin pale with fear. "Thank the ancestors you're here. Nobody knows what's happening. The professors are arguing about protocol, and the students are panicking," Maya finished. "Yeah, I noticed." Another shudder ran through the station, stronger this time. The lights went out completely for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. In the darkness, the crowd's panic reached new heights. That was when Maya made a decision that would have horrified every safety instructor she'd ever had on Earth. She climbed onto an emergency equipment locker and whistled. It wasn't a normal whistle. It was the piercing, two-tone emergency signal that every human child learned before they could walk properly. The sound cut through the babble of voices like a blade, and suddenly every eye in the area was focused on her. "Listen up," Maya shouted, her voice carrying with the authority that came from years of emergency drills. "I need everyone to stop talking and start listening. Right now." To her surprise, the crowd actually quieted down. Maybe it was the tone of absolute command in her voice, or maybe it was just shock at seeing a first-year student taking charge, but either way, she had their attention. "First things first," she continued. "We're not all going to fit in the emergency shelter. But that's okay. Because we don't all need to be in there. What we need is organization." "You're just a student," protested a Zaltharian professor. "You have no authority here." "I'm a human," Maya replied flatly. "And right now, I'm the only person here who's been trained for this kind of situation since I was 5 years old." She pointed to a group of faculty members who were still arguing about procedure. You, and you. Stop debating and start helping. We need teams to check the station's structural integrity, assess the life support systems, and coordinate with station security. We can't just... One of them started to object. Maya fixed him with a stare that would have made a razorback think twice. "The station just took multiple impacts. We've got atmosphere loss somewhere in the facility. And we're standing here arguing about protocol while people might be dying. So yes, we can just..." Another shudder ran through the station, and this time Maya heard something that made her blood run cold. The distinctive groaning sound of metal under extreme stress. "Sierra," she called out. "You're good with computers, right?" "Yes, but I need you to access the station's emergency systems and get me a damage report. Real information, not the sanitized summary they're broadcasting." "I can't access restricted systems." Maya looked at her friend with something approaching desperation. "Sierra, in about 10 minutes. Those restricted systems might be the only thing keeping us alive. This is not the time for following rules." "Axa." While Sierra reluctantly began working on her tablet, Maya turned to address the crowd again. "Everyone who's not faculty or essential personnel, I need you to form groups by species and designate group leaders. If we need to evacuate specific sections of the station, we're going to do it in an organized fashion." "Who put you in charge?" demanded the same Zaltharian professor who had objected before. Maya was about to answer when a new voice cut through the noise. "I did." Everyone turned to see Captain Torres striding through the crowd. The human woman was the station's head of security, a former Earth Colonial Defense Force officer who had transferred to civilian service after the Contact War. Her uniform was scorched, and there was blood on her left sleeve, but her voice was steady and calm. "Chen, right?" she said, looking at Maya. "Atmospheric engineering family? From the Portland sector?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Your family's reputation precedes you." Captain Torres turned to address the crowd. "This station has been attacked by raiders using kinetic impactors. We've lost main power, we've got hull breaches in sections 7 through 12, and our communication array is down. The good news is that the attack seems to have stopped. The bad news is that we're dead in space until we can effect repairs." A murmur of fear ran through the crowd. Captain Torres held up a hand for silence. "I've got 30 security personnel trying to coordinate damage control across a facility designed to house 2,000 people. I don't have enough trained personnel to handle this situation using standard protocols." She looked directly at Maya. "But I do have someone who grew up dealing with catastrophic system failures as a matter of course." Maya felt the weight of several hundred stares focused on her. "Captain, I'm just a first-year student." "You're a human first-year student," Torres corrected. "Which means you've had more emergency response training than most of my security staff. I'm hereby deputizing you as emergency coordinator for the civilian population." The Zaltharian professor sputtered indignantly. "This is highly irregular. The proper chain of command." "The proper chain of command," Captain Torres interrupted, "assumes we're dealing with a normal emergency situation. This is a disaster scenario, which means we adapt or we die." She handed Maya a security communicator. "Chen, I need you to organize evacuation of the compromised sections and coordinate temporary housing for displaced personnel. Can you handle that?" Maya looked around at the sea of frightened alien faces, then back at Captain Torres. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. I'll check back in 30 minutes." As the captain strode away to deal with other crisis points, Maya found herself facing a crowd of several hundred beings who were all looking to her for leadership. For a moment, the weight of responsibility threatened to overwhelm her. Then Sierra appeared at her side, tablet in hand. "I got into the emergency systems," she said quietly. "The damage is extensive." Maya looked at the data display, rapidly absorbing the information. Hull breaches, power grid failures, life support systems running on emergency backup power. It was bad. Very bad. But it was also a problem with solutions. "Okay," she said, raising her voice again. "Here's what's going to happen." Over the next 6 hours, Maya organized the largest civilian emergency response operation in Kepler Station's history. She divided the evacuees into work teams based on their species' physical capabilities and technical expertise. The Centaurians, with their mathematical abilities, were assigned to calculate optimal resource distribution. The aquatic Dipari were sent to manage the water reclamation systems. The insectoid, Krolek, with their natural affinity for mechanical systems, were assigned to assist with repairs. Most importantly, she created a command structure that actually worked. Instead of the usual academic hierarchy based on degrees and seniority, she organized teams based on competence and the ability to make decisions under pressure. "Status report," she said into her communicator as she coordinated the evacuation of Section 9. "Temporary housing, established in the gymnasium," came Sierra's voice. "We've got sleeping arrangements for about 300 people, and the Orathi medical students have set up a triage center. Life support status? Stable but strained. We're running at about 60% of normal capacity, but the engineering teams think they can get us back to 80% by tomorrow." Maya nodded, checking items off her mental list. "What about food supplies?" What about food supplies?" "That's going to be a problem," Sierra admitted. "The raiders hit the primary food storage areas. We've got maybe 48 hours of emergency rations." "Copy that. I'll work on solutions." Maya switched to another channel and contacted one of the engineering teams. "Rodriguez here," came a familiar human voice. "Rodriguez, it's Chen. Status on the hydroponic bays? Sections C and D are intact, but we lost the environmental controls. Without proper temperature and atmosphere regulation, what would we need to get them back online? Honestly, a miracle. The control systems were manufactured on Thessar Prime, and we don't have replacement parts." Maya thought for a moment. "What if we improvised? Human-style emergency repairs using whatever we have available? What if we improvised a 2-0 verse?" There was a pause. "That might actually work, but we'd need someone who understands both human engineering principles and alien hydroponic systems." "I'll be right there." Maya handed her communicator to Lyra, who had turned out to be surprisingly good at coordinating refugee housing. "I need to check on something. Keep monitoring the evacuation progress." The hydroponic bays were a disaster area. The beautiful, precisely controlled growing chambers that had provided fresh food for the station's population were dark and silent. Without their automated systems, the carefully maintained ecosystem was already beginning to fail. But Maya saw possibilities where the alien engineers saw only problems. "Show me what we've got to work with," she told Rodriguez. For the next 4 hours, they performed what could only be described as technological necromancy. Using emergency power cells scavenged from evacuation pods, atmospheric regulators from damaged life support systems, and temperature control units cannibalized from laboratory equipment, they built a jury-rigged environmental control system that had no business working. But it worked anyway, because sometimes necessity and human engineering stubbornness were enough. "I can't believe this is actually functional," marveled Dr. Kesseth, one of the station's alien botanical specialists, as he watched vegetables growing under improvised LED arrays, powered by emergency batteries. "It's not pretty," Maya admitted, looking at their cobbled-together creation. "But it'll keep the plants alive until we can get proper replacement parts." How did you know this would work?" Maya shrugged. "Growing up on Earth, you learn that sometimes you have to make do with what you have. Emergency repairs are just part of life." By the time Captain Torres made her rounds 8 hours after the attack, the crisis had been transformed into a manageable situation. The immediate threat to life was over, temporary housing was established, and critical systems were running on improvised repairs that would keep everyone alive until proper rescue operations could be organized. "Impressive work, Chen," the captain said, reviewing Maya's status reports. "I don't think I've ever seen a civilian evacuation run this smoothly." "It wasn't just me," Maya replied. "Everyone stepped up when they needed to." "Maybe. But leadership matters, especially in crisis situations." As if summoned by her words, a small crowd approached them. Maya was surprised to see Crix among them, along with the 3 upperclassmen who had confronted her in the cafeteria. "Miss Chen," the lead Zaltharian said formally, We wanted to apologize." Maya looked at them with genuine confusion. "For what?" "For not understanding," Crix said quietly. "What we saw today. The way you organized the evacuation, coordinated the repairs, solved problems that our best engineers said were impossible. This is what you meant about humans being different, isn't it?" Maya considered the question seriously. "Different how?" "You don't just study emergency procedures," Sierra said, joining the conversation. "You live them. All of you. It's not theoretical knowledge. It's practical experience. Every human on this station knew exactly what to do when the alarms started," the hegemony student added. "While the rest of us were panicking, your people were already organizing, already working on solutions." Maya nodded slowly. "That's what I was trying to explain before. It's not that we're violent or savage. It's that we're adapted for survival in hostile environments. When things go wrong, we don't freeze up or fall back on protocols that don't fit the situation. We adapt, improvise, overcome." Crix stepped forward, his reptilian features showing genuine remorse. "I challenged you to honor combat, because I thought you were just another primitive, trying to prove something. I was wrong. Your honor was never in question." "And mine was," Maya said quietly. "When I disarmed you, I could have humiliated you. I could have hurt you badly. But I chose not to, because that wouldn't have solved anything." "Why?" Maya looked around at the group of alien students, then at Captain Torres, who was watching the exchange with interest. "Because that's the other thing about humans," she said. "We don't just survive. We build. We create. We find ways for different species to work together. Even when everything is falling apart around us." She gestured to the evacuation area, where hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds were working together to rebuild their temporary community. "This is what humans do. We turn disasters into opportunities. We take broken systems and make them work. We bring different people together and help them find common ground." Crix nodded slowly. Perhaps there are different kinds of strength." "Definitely," Maya agreed. "And the galaxy's big enough for all of them." As the group dispersed, Captain Torres lingered behind. "Chen, I've got a question for you." "Yes, ma'am? What are you planning to study here?" "Xenobiology. I want to understand how different species adapt to their environments." Captain Torres smiled. "Well, after today, I think you've got a pretty good handle on that. But have you ever considered emergency management? The Colonial Defense Force could use someone with your skills." Maya looked around at the organized chaos of the evacuation area, where beings from across the galaxy were working together to solve problems and take care of each other. "Maybe," she said. "But first, I think I want to finish learning about everyone else. There's still a lot I don't understand about how different species think and adapt." "Fair enough. But when you graduate, give me a call. The galaxy needs more people who can bring order out of chaos." As Captain Torres walked away, Maya found herself standing alone for the first time since the crisis began. Around her, the evacuation area hummed with quiet activity as people settled into their temporary accommodations, shared meals from emergency rations, and worked together to solve the thousand small problems that came with sudden displacement. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, cultural misunderstandings, and the stress that came with being refugees in their own home. But it was working. Different species with different strengths and different ways of thinking, all contributing to the common goal of survival. Maya smiled to herself and went to find Sierra. There was still work to be done, and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But that was okay. After all, she was human. Solving problems was what they did best.